the comments made that we are unwilling to do what the House has been incapable of doing so far, at least last time I checked. I don't know if something's happened since I came to the floor, but the House has been incapable of even sending what they viewed as their supplemental. But why would, I don't know exactly why we would be blamed for not voting on something that the House has not even passed, number one. Number two is, yes, there are many of us who will oppose what the House is sending because, number one, it doesn't even provide the necessary resources that is necessary for an emergency of unforeseen dimension, a refugee crisis, a humanitarian crisis that needs to be dealt with. Number two, when you look at the proposals that are contemplated in the House, not only do they not fund appropriately to meet the challenge, they misappropriate how they're going to do funding to meet this crisis. Now, I don't know that we need to militarize the border because no one is threatening the border insofar as the consequences of any violence. I don't know that a National Guardsman with a rifle is necessary against an 8-year-old. I really don't. And we heard the colleague from Texas say, well, these children are actually submitting themselves to the Border Patrol, not trying to flee them. So part of what the House of Representatives wants to spend millions of dollars for the National Guard. Well, I'd rather spend it on the Border Patrol, not the National Guard. We don't need to militarize our border. I'd like to make sure that when a child does come over, having fled 2,000 miles because they were raped, or a child who was told by the gang, join us or die, or a child who saw their father or mother killed before them and thought they'd be the next one, that if that happens to be the case for that child, that they'd have the opportunity to make their case, and you can't do that in 72 hours. Now, I was at the same meeting earlier today with the President, which was really about national security, but the senator from Texas raised this question. It's a legitimate question to raise. And I didn't hear the same response in the context that the senator from Texas characterized that response. The President said there has to be due process, but yes, we need to find a way to try to accelerate that process, but within the context of due process. Not to strip away the law that was passed in a bipartisan process and signed by a Republican president because he understood, as did the Congress at the time, that if you flee 2,000 miles and actually get here, it must be then a lot more than an economic refugee. It must be because you have a credible fear of the loss of your life or your safety. And so that's what's at stake here. Now, it boggles my mind that we cannot get a successful vote. I don't know if we will or we won't, but I get a sense from what I hear from my Republican colleagues that they won't cast a positive vote for the type of supplemental that would give the resources to meet the challenge to do what? To put more people on the border in terms of border control. To do what? To create more immigration judges, to create more prosecutors. What are they going to all do? Cuddle the child? No. They're going to be enforcing the border. The border in states where some of my colleagues seem to be the biggest opponent of the supplemental. I don't get it. I don't get it. Now, I've never voted for a supplemental that's enforcement only, but I'm ready to do it because this is an emergency. I understand the gravity of the situation, both on the human side as well as a national security question. But I can't fathom for the life of me the views that, no, let's vote against the money, create a crisis which basically is going to leave us in a situation in which if we do not solve the supplemental prior to leaving on this recess, monies for the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Health and Human Services for these purposes will run out. The crisis won't have been abated, but the situation will continue to exist and the monies will have run out, which means that the President said, well, I'm going to have to reallocate resources, from within that department, those departments for other purposes, which means that other national security, homeland security issues and other health issues are not going to have the resources to meet the challenges that they are presently meeting. That is not in the collective interest of the country. And so I strongly am going to support a supplemental that I would have never voted for because of the emergent nature of what we have. But at the same token, you can't be about putting National Guard at the border, can't be about militarizing the border when there's no military threat, and it cannot be about stripping the law that was passed in a strong bipartisan vote, signed by a Republican president, because they understood the nature of the potential challenge, and they understood the very essence of a child fleeing 2,000 miles and having a shot, only a shot, no guarantee that they in fact could make their case for asylum. That would send a message across the globe as we are telling other countries in the world, in Africa, in Jordan, where we tell them handle the Syrian refugees, in Turkey, where we tell them handle the Syrian refugees, in the Dominican Republic, when there was the hurricane, and we said let the Haitians come on over. But we can't handle the humanitarian needs of children who have a credible sense and a credible case about fear for their life. Not every child will have that case, and those will be deported. But not every child should be automatically denied either.